Have you ever felt like you were on the verge of success only to be hit with a crushing setback? Well, that happened to me, and it was the moment that changed everything. I used to think that failure was something to avoid at all costs. I believed that if I just worked hard enough, I could dodge it. But life had other plans. My biggest failure wasn't just a mistake or a bad decision. It felt like the end of everything I had worked for. But little did I know, it would become the foundation for my future success. I was deep into a project that I thought would change my life. I had put in countless hours, sacrificed sleep, and given everything I had. I thought I was prepared for anything. But one wrong decision, one small misstep, sent everything crashing down. The project collapsed, and I felt like a complete failure. It wasn't just the loss of time or resources. It was the loss of my confidence. I had put everything on the line and lost. For a while, I let myself spiral. I thought, what now? What's the point of continuing? But I was embarrassed, and I doubted whether I could ever succeed at anything again. But I had to confront something. I could either let this failure define me, or I could choose to learn from it. At that moment, I realized something crucial. Failure doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning. I started reading books on failure, success, and resilience. I learned that almost every successful person faced massive failures. But what set them apart was how they responded. They didn't let failure crush their spirit. They used it as fuel to push forward. And that's when the light bulb went off for me. One of the most powerful lessons I learned is that failure isn't something to fear. It's something to embrace. In fact, it's one of the best teachers you can have. When you fail, you learn what doesn't work. You discover areas where you can grow. I realized that my failure wasn't a reflection of who I was. It was just a stepping stone in my journey. And from that point on, I stopped fearing it. I started seeing it as a valuable experience, something I could use to improve myself. I didn't wait for everything to magically fix itself. I started making small changes. I reviewed the mistakes I had made, sought advice, and put my plans into action again. The difference this time was that I was no longer afraid of failing. I was eager to learn from every mistake. It wasn't overnight, but slowly things began to turn around. I started seeing the fruits of my efforts, and the lessons from that failure began to pay off. My mindset had shifted. I wasn't just pursuing success. I was now focused on growth, and that made all the difference. Looking back, I can honestly say that failure was the best thing that ever happened to me. It taught me to be resilient, to stay humble, and to never stop learning. My biggest failure became the foundation for my greatest lessons, and in the end, it didn't define me. It refined me. One of the most profound shifts I experienced after this failure was in how I viewed challenges. Before, I saw challenges as obstacles, things to avoid if possible. But now I understood that challenges were simply opportunities in disguise. Every time I faced something difficult, it wasn't about whether I could avoid failure. It was about what I could learn from it. I also began to develop resilience in ways I never had before. Instead of being discouraged by setbacks, I started using them as checkpoints to adjust my path. Every time something didn't go as planned, I would ask myself, what can I do differently? What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this experience? I stopped seeing failure as a reason to quit and started seeing it as a part of the journey to success. Another key turning point was when I started seeking out stories of others who had failed, but eventually succeeded. I realized I wasn't alone in this experience. Everyone from successful entrepreneurs to athletes to creatives had failed before reaching their goals. What stood out to me was their ability to bounce back, to keep going even when things were tough. I began to apply that same mindset in my own life, realizing that if they could do it, so could I. Putting my newfound understanding of failure into practice wasn't easy. At first, it felt strange to approach things differently. But over time, I began to notice subtle changes. I took risks in my work that I would have never dared to take before. I launched projects without the overwhelming fear of them failing. And if they did fail, I didn't panic. I adjusted, learned, and kept moving forward. One of the biggest changes was my decision to start this very channel. Before, I had many ideas, but was terrified of putting myself out there. I worried about what people would think or whether it would be successful. But once I shifted my mindset about failure, I realized that the only true failure was not trying. So I took the plunge. I launched my content, and the growth I experienced from that moment wasn't just in numbers. It was a personal transformation. As I continued to apply the lessons from my failure, I began to see the long-term impact on both my work and personal life. I became more confident, not because I was succeeding every time, but because I was learning every time. I didn't fear challenges anymore, and that was empowering. I knew that no matter what happened, I would be okay because I had learned how to handle failure and keep moving forward. Another rewarding part of this journey has been the ability to help others. By sharing my story of failure and the lessons I've learned, I've been able to inspire others to view their own setbacks in a different light. Instead of seeing failure as the end, they started to see it as a beginning, a lesson that could be applied to everything they do. If you're in the middle of your own failure right now, or if you've experienced something that has knocked you down, I want you to know this. It's not the end. It's just a part of your journey. You can get back up, learn from it, and come back stronger. Keep going. Your success will come not in spite of your failures, but because of them. When I look back at that time in my life when I felt like everything had fallen apart, I see it for what it truly was, the start of something new. Failure gave me the chance to rewrite my story, to choose how I would move forward. It taught me the importance of resilience, learning, and the power of taking action despite fear. Today, I don't just measure success by accomplishments, but by how much I've learned and grown along the way. So don't let your biggest failure be the thing that holds you back. Let it be the thing that propels you forward. Embrace failure as the powerful lesson it is, and let it shape your future. Because when you do, you'll see just how much potential you have within you. Remember, the greatest lessons often come from the hardest times. Embrace them, learn from them, and use them to fuel your journey. Your biggest failure might just be your greatest gift. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever faced a similar challenge, make sure to leave a comment below. I'd love to hear about your experiences and how you've turned failure into a lesson. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this message with anyone who could use a little inspiration. Thank you for being part of this journey. Let's grow together.